Okay. So quick here with the recap and the update for today, just some topics that we're going to discuss as we go forward. Just give a quick update on the association. I'm going to really turn it over to our two speakers today. We have Nicole Griffin, our contract lobbyist from Powers, Griffin and Hill, as well as Ryan O'Donnell for Pullman Comley. Opportunity for both of them to kind of give updates. I know Ryan's going to kind of chime in with Nicole here and tag team the legislative session from Connecticut, some other things that we're working on as well post-session, as well as the national side, Ryan's team working with us on things that are going on nationally and what we need to be prepared for. And then obviously, I have a Pullman Comley update. I know that if you guys don't know Pullman Comley already, they are our legal counsel with the CRA, but they're part of you as a member, meaning that you have access to Ryan and his team really throughout the year. You get a free consultation, multiple free consultations a year as a member, which is an invaluable opportunity for you, whether that is, any issues or questions that you have legally. Doesn't mean you have to use them as a lawyer, but even if you have your own, it's nothing wrong to always use Ryan's expertise and his team's expertise. If he doesn't know the answer, he's definitely going to find it for you. I think that's really important for everyone listening in today, or if you're listening to it on a recording, we can continue to connect you with Ryan and Ryan's team. So, and then Q&A. I don't know if this will go the full 90 minutes. I know we put it on, but as people join, I also want to leave some time at the end if there's any Q&A. I know I've gotten some side emails and questions on certain topics that I'd love to be able to answer specifically if we don't answer it throughout the webinar. So without further ado, we'll kind of get started on just a quick CRA update. Thank you to those, night at the Capitol that we had on June 2nd, which was Monday night down in Hartford. Always a huge success and successful event. We had over 25 restaurants participate by providing food to our legislators. We had another 130 or so that registered and came as owner operators or people from the industry, as well as obviously the House and Senate was in session with 2 nights to go before session ended, or 3 nights to go. Always a great event. Continues to be a success every year, but it really is a success because of each of you and being and participating in it. An opportunity for us to really just continue to showcase the value and what our industry brings to this state. Also a way for us and Nicole and myself and others to make sure in the last few nights of session, nothing crazy is going on, no bills that might hurt us, but also we tried to use this as a big push on some of our issues. Unfortunately, we didn't get over the finish line and trying to play some offense this year, but it always continues to help, especially with new legislators that we always have in the building. Chance for them to mingle, meet a lot of the different restaurants. We had restaurants from all over the state. So thank you for your participation. Thank you to my staff to making that another huge success. And the other big event update here is our golf classic scheduled for a week from Monday. The Monday after the Travelers Championship will be at Lyman Orchards. We are sold out of golfers. So participation really is, you can still do T signs, you can still support our association and our foundation. We have a raffle and a silent auction. If you want to provide, gift certificates, if you want to provide gift cards, maybe a chef tasting opportunity, something like that we can utilize for raising money for the foundation. Also, if you are interested in our dinner afterwards, I should have put a photo up here of all of our chefs. We have 6 incredible chefs. We always do a farm to table dinner following golf, which we can't wait to look forward to having that, as well as we work with our Pro Start culinary high school students that actually participate with the chefs that we have. So really excited for June 23rd. I'm hoping everyone on this call or people listening in have a chance to participate. You do not have to be a golfer to have some part of it. A lot of people just want to buy tickets and come to the dinner, or others just want to support it any way they can. So we appreciate the support. Another record-setting year for our golf tournament here, coming up in a little less than about 10 days, 11 days. So, all right, just going to kind of turn it right over to Nicole. You guys don't know Nicole. You should. She's our contract lobbyist, former executive director of the CRA, works tirelessly inside this photo of this building here. She is now with her 2 kids. Luckily that she doesn't have to be there every hour of the day, pretty much, working for us for the legislative session here at the state capitol. But I just will turn it over to Nicole. I know Nicole probably didn't see this photo this morning, but again, this is CRA night at the Capitol this year. But I will, with Doug Pelliston and a couple legislators that we had in the photo here of just what the impact of that night is. But Nicole's going to go through kind of the different bills, the ones we were on offense, the ones that we played defense on, and kind of give everyone an update on the state legislative session that ended CNADA about 7 days ago, a little over 7 days. So, Nicole, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Scott. Good morning, everyone. I apologize for my voice. I have a little bit of a post-session sinus infection going on here. But as Scott said, session ended last Wednesday at midnight. It was what we refer to as a long legislative session, which means the legislature passed a biennial budget and sent to Governor Lamont's desk. It was negotiated between the governor and the Democratic majority. Details are still kind of coming out. There's really not a lot in the budget that impacts the business community, which is good. We go through sessions, I think, where we have a lot of major battles where we're defending the business community, the hospitality industry, specifically against bills that would negatively impact your businesses, specifically that come out of the Labor Committee, sometimes the Judiciary Committee. While some of those bills are up on this slide right now, we were able to defeat all of those bills this year, along with other trade groups that worked against them as well. I would say we had an extremely positive session. While some bills that we worked on that were proactive didn't make the finish line, I think it helped raise the profile of the hospitality industry, of business in general. I'll run through those now. Feel free to ask questions as we go or at the end. I'm happy to try to answer any questions. I think last week, after the session ended, I heard a reporter ask maybe the speaker or the governor a question about the session and bills that passed. And I think this year in a long session, there were almost 4,000 bills raised and about 300 to 400 bills that actually became law. So it kind of puts things in perspective. We're up there for 5 months and, every legislator has the greatest idea ever. But so few of them actually make it to the finish line and become law. The first bill on the slide here is regarding the state budget and the tourism funding. The state legislature has a marketing fund to fund tourism. We had pushed to take a portion of the revenue from the meals and beverage tax, the 1% meals and beverage tax, and dedicate that money towards increased funding in tourism. Unfortunately, that did not make it to the final budget, and the legislature and the Lamont administration decided to flat fund tourism at $4.5 million for the next 2 fiscal years. We had proposed several different iterations of how to do it, whether it was 20% of the revenue, or once the revenue hit a certain amount of money, the rest could go to tourism marketing. Scott did a great job with the media and drawing attention to this. He, as a matter of fact, I would say almost hijacked a press conference of the governors to draw attention to this, and the media just grabbed onto it, and we did get a lot of attention. Unfortunately, the budget dollars went 2 different directions this year. Regarding the interchange fee on sales tax, it's a proposal that we had put forward the past 2 sessions, along with some other trade groups, including the grocery stores, and the retail merchants helped out as well. And that legislation would eliminate the ability for the banks to charge the sales tax on the interchange fees. Last year, the bill moved out of the Finance Committee. This year, we had a hearing in the Finance Committee, and that was kind of the end of it. I guess, fortunately or unfortunately, a similar law passed in Illinois and is caught up in the courts right now. And so for that reason and others, the bill did not advance. It is quite an issue that we have with the banks and the credit card companies. They do fight it very hard. And so certainly we'll be back next year and hoping that we'll have a different result. Predictive scheduling is a bill that's been around for, I'd say, about a decade now. It's a bill that would require employers to post the schedules of employees 10 days to 2 weeks in advance. And if those schedules change, you'd have to pay the employees or be penalized. And so that bill also was defeated and did not even make it out of committee this year. There was a bill in the Transportation Committee to lower the blood alcohol level for DUIs from 0.08 to 0.05. That I think is the second or third year for that bill. That also had support of the Department of Transportation. It did not make it out of committee again this year. There was a proposal early on this session that would tax all deliveries, including food deliveries. So, each package you receive a day, whether it's a DoorDash delivery, your Amazon delivery, anything else that might come to your house would have a 28 cents tax on it. It was an idea that was quickly extinguished in the Transportation Committee early on in session. I think Scott testified on that one as well. Single-use plastics and polystyrene, that's been around for a while. We call it the plastic straw bill. It's an effort to eliminate just what it says, all single-use plastics and polystyrene, which is styrofoam. We've rarely had an issue with the styrofoam piece, as we believe many restaurants aren't using styrofoam for to-go boxes anymore, and it's phasing out of the industry. But on the plastic straws, we've certainly been opposed to a mandate to eliminate plastic straws and felt that restaurants were doing that on their own if they so choose to go paper or other recyclable products. And so that bill did make it right up to the end of the session with the proponents trying to negotiate different options for us. But it did not make it through the final days of session. So we do expect that to be back next year. Another proposal this year, which did get some attention early in session, was a tax on sweetened beverages. So basically for restaurants, that would be a tax on all sweetened beverages served, including sodas that comes out of the guns. The tax on that was pretty extraordinary. It had a public hearing in the Finance Committee. It did not make it much further than that. Non-compete agreements, that's been a perennial favorite of the Labor Committee to prohibit non-compete agreements. Did come out of the Labor Committee, was floating around until the end of session, and did not pass either chamber this year. So that was a positive as well. There was a bill that you see green crabs on this list. It sounds a little bit funny, not something we talk about often, but a restaurant operator out of Mystic was looking for an expedited path to be able to serve green crabs as an invasive species. And so we worked with the Department of Environmental Protection to craft some language regarding permitting an invasive species to make it easier for those that want to serve green crabs in different menu items at restaurants. Another bill that's not on this list is consumer data privacy. Connecticut passed a consumer data privacy law 2 years ago. It's pretty complicated stuff. It's to protect consumers and their data, of course. It's not targeted necessarily at restaurants. However, we may get scooped into some of the aspects of it. This year, legislation was passed to basically tighten some of the language on consumer data privacy. We worked with our friends at the National Restaurant Association to ensure that the language would not negatively impact restaurants in Connecticut. We can send out a summary to members explaining the impacts of that directly on business owners, but we think the impact should be minimal, and there's nothing that puts you in a position for lawsuits or anything like that on the consumer data privacy bill. That is a very quick summary of everything that we worked on. I think that we probably tracked over 200 bills for the Restaurant Association this year. Those are just kind of some of the highlights. And I'm certainly happy to take any questions anyone has.
Thanks, Nicole. As this is a member, here, I'll go back, a member only kind of conversation here with the members that are here. You can unmute yourself. You can, as I try to find our chat here in the new layout here of Teams, other people can see it. But I think, please unmute yourself if you want to ask a question. But I think I have a couple questions just back to Nicole to kind of update. And I think first and foremost is more of a statement to make our members, so much is always talked about, well, what actually happens advocacy wise, like, things aren't going to always pass. But I give kudos to Nicole, and, obviously you look at those first two bullets up at the top, the tourism budget. You guys know my frustration and the lack of funding, and how that's going to hurt our industry in the long run. And we're going to continue to push for that. The interchange fees on sales tax, that's not just a Connecticut issue. That is across the country. I think there were 26 bills raised. Obviously, the state of Illinois last year was successful, but it's still in the courts, and that's what's really held this up. Even with the Finance Committee this year, they never like to try to pass legislation that is still being fought in the courts. But it just doesn't make sense to me. We have to continue to push for this bill. I actually had a call with a lot of the other CEOs in the National Restaurant Association yesterday, just about what we can do next session. To push back on these processing companies and these banks, because it's really straightforward. You shouldn't have to pay your interchange fees to collect the state sales tax. Either the state should pay it, which we know that's probably not a reality, or the processing companies, and don't even say the banks, the processors first. They should eliminate that from your fees, and it's significant. It's about $130 to $140 million a year with all the merchants in Connecticut, is the amount of money that these processors and these banks are receiving from the merchants just for sales tax, which is insane. And also in restaurants specifically, you have an extra 1% that your customers are paying. So you're also paying interchange fees for an additional tax. So we'll continue to push that. We appreciate all of you guys getting involved in that bill. We had a lot of members testify, submit testimony. We will bring those two back. But I think on the other side, Nicole, I think a lot of people just don't realize how many bills are being tracked. You said there's 4,000 bills that are raised. But I think it's just to kudos to your team. When you look at the predictive scheduling, I think it's year 10 or 11 that bill, just does not make sense for our industry. The BAC1, blood alcohol content, is such a challenge for us because, it's just there's not really factual data. They just think, legislators thinks it sounds good to go from 0.08 to 0.05. But, the fact that we continue to try to make people understand that, our trainings, let's invest more money in trainings and serve safe alcohol and other opportunities to keep people safe and people safe on the roads, but, not just moving a number, because it can have other effects on liquor liability, dram shop, other concerns that we still are, don't know the answers to. So appreciate that. Delivery tax, also just kind of want to go through these, so you guys know, that was a new bill this year where, the Transportation Committee was just looking for more revenue like anything else. So let's just tax people. So they wanted a 28 cents. I have food deliveries on here, but for you guys to know, it was on any delivery, any Amazon to your house, couch being delivered to your house, maybe even a delivery of an oven to your restaurant. Really, it painted the whole gamut of everyone would have been hit with that 28-cent tax. We definitely feel something like that version will come back to us, but that was extremely frustrating to explain that we don't need to continue to tax people. We need to find other ways to fund the transportation committee's plans on the transportation budget. Plastics and polystyrene. Like we said before, I think we had good conversations about polystyrene. I think the fact that it just ran out on the clock of the environmental committee, but we continue to have good conversations about, listen, we all want to make the environment safe, better for the future, but at the same time, full bans and not understanding the single-use plastic sides and the cost differential when you're talking about single-use utensils, things of that nature that we want to be careful of. And that's really why I think time ran out. It was just a lot of conversations. That will be back. The sweetener beverage bill this year was wild for you guys to understand. There is a soda tax in Philadelphia and Boulder, I think Denver or Boulder, Colorado. But this was expansive. This was to not only look at syrups, or the actual sugar tax, as they call it. This was also in powders in syrup form. So an example for you guys, if you bought a box of Coca-Cola syrup, right now I think the price is anywhere between $80 and $100 for that box. This tax would have been, I believe it was 2 cents per ounce that was provided. So it's going to be about a $46 to $48 tax to add it to you, what you had to pay. So another one that we had to just explain, what's the purpose of this bill? Is it to actually limit people drinking sweetened beverages, or is it to generate revenue on the backs of really restaurant owners? Because this also tax was at the wholesale distributor side. Then it would be passed on to you, and you really couldn't even pass it on to your customers and show it. You would just been paying $140, $150 for a box of soda versus $80 or $90, and you would have had to increase your cost of sweetened beverages, which, we did not see as something fair for our industry. Non-compete, we talked about. So I guess back to you, Nicole, you said it was a successful session from your side. When you look at it, obviously, when I look at the top two pieces, a couple things, but how do you think, I felt like it was weird for me the last couple nights of session that we weren't really pushing a bill or pushing against a bill. What do you think fares when I look at other associations, other businesses? Like, did they receive the same fate? Do you think that the work of our members getting involved continues to pay dividends on some of these issues that continue to come back, or also new bills like that I just talked about that come up that come every year? Next year we'll have new bills as well. But why do you think it was a success for you?
So I think any session where our members are reaching out to legislators and forging these relationships helps make it a success. I mean, I say this to you all the time and the team at the CRA, when legislators come up to me and say, okay, please stop. I've heard from 10 restaurants in my district. I'm with you guys. I mean, that's great because they're hearing from their constituents and business owners. So for me, that's great. I mean, on the delivery tax, the senator that put it out there, she said, hey, I just wanted to see what the feedback would be. I realized it wasn't great. And I heard that. She said she heard it from so many different industries. She said, I wasn't thinking about it that way. And I floated an idea and it wasn't a great one. And that happens in the Capitol. People float ideas to see what kind of feedback they get. And they hear from people, right? They'll hear from all these different restaurants in our case that say, hey, here's how this impacts my business. So it's not a great idea. And there's nothing more impactful than the constituents and the business owners or the people in their district saying why this is bad for me. I mean, the single biggest issue I think we've had over the past few years has been the elimination of the tip credit. And while that bill wasn't put forth this year, it might come back again. And I think when legislators that are have open minds to discuss these issues, hear from business owners and people who are paid this wage and like to make tips and like to earn tips, would like to keep the system the same way, it's why we're successful, because they're hearing from people in the industry, which helps me do my job, certainly every day when I'm talking to people. It's much more challenging when a legislator says, well, I haven't heard from anyone, so why would I think it's a problem?
No, I couldn't agree more. I guess the second part of this question, Nicole, is, if I'm a member right now listening to this and session's over, so it's we can't really change what happened. Some ways that's good, some ways that's still frustrating. But what do you say to those members that, going back to their businesses through the summer, but when you look at a photo like this and you have, legislators, and you see Julie, you see Farley, you see those folks that are in that photo that, with Doug Palestana, one of our executive committee members of the board here in Danbury. But what do you say, how important is it to build those relationships for us as the association when we look back to our members and say that they should use the next kind of 6 months to 7 months, if those legislators, or maybe you don't, how important do you think that is, leading into next session? Because obviously it's election year, but it's a local election year, it's a mayor election year. So a lot of these reps are going to be back next year, but how important are building those relationships outside of session, if you can, for us and for you?
Well, it's super important. I think, that all legislators aren't always going to be with us. I mean, we could take Senator Kushner in this photo as an example. She's very pro-labor. She's with us basically on nothing, and that's just never going to change. It's great that, Doug Palestana has a good relationship with her. She's just never going to be with us, and we aren't going to be changing minds there. But there are legislators whose minds we can change, or minds we can convince, if they don't have an opinion on an issue, to support the restaurant industry. I'll call out Matt Storch because I see he's on this call. He happens to have restaurants in the district of the Senate Majority Leader, Senator Bob Duff, and he's got a lot of juice at the Capitol, and he makes a lot of decisions up there. And if Senator Duff walks into one of Matt's restaurants, it's always good to say hi, check in, see how he's doing, and, share with him what the issue of the day is, in Matt's charming way. So I just think it's always good to say hi to these folks when they come into your restaurant, introduce yourself, and say, hey, what's great about Connecticut, or what we could do better in Connecticut, and just have a relationship with them so you could pick up the phone and call them when you need something.
No, I couldn't agree more, Nicole.
Hey,
I
Matt.
guess the other Matt, you want to chime in at all? I know with Senator Duff, you guys are, so close.
He's staying on mute.
Probably a good decision. I guess the other piece that I think a lot of members don't realize, Nicole, and we probably should promote a little bit more is we talk all the time about support and help, or like, hey, we have so many allied members out there, but a lot of our members sometimes deal with challenges, whether it's and I could bring Ryan in here to this conversation, but I think it's valuable here today on this call, kind of post session of the calls that we get. Some people don't even know to ask, but I think, Nicole, you yourself and a lot of us are starting to build stronger relationships with commissioners and different departments within the state underneath whether the governor's office or such. So you're talking about, DOL, or you're talking about, even DRS questions if there's something that feels different or something's happening, or you're dealing on a local level, whether maybe it's planning and zoning, maybe you're trying to do something on all the calls that we get, but fire or things of that nature, that, hey, you're looking at that, and who do I call, or what support can you provide? And Ryan, I feel like you could chime in as well, but I'll start with you, Nicole. Like, can you explain a little bit more to the members about the importance of our association, that it isn't just a bill or advocacy, it's also, being able to help you navigate, running your restaurant every day at not only at a state level, but also at a local level.
Yeah, sure, Scott. That's a good point. I think that oftentimes people are intimidated by some of these state agencies and, permitting and processing and processes that happen, or even on the local level. I think we have a depth of relationships in some of these agencies that can be really helpful, whether it's, liquor control, your permit has been stuck there for weeks and you don't know what to do. Whether it's, like Scott said, a local planning and zoning, we might have a relationship with the mayor or first selectman in that town. Certainly we can't make certain things disappear if there's problems, but if there's an issue at the Department of Labor, Ryan works with them all the time. If there's an issue with DEEP, just reach out, call Scott or call me. Sometimes we can help expedite permitting, or if there's confusion, or we know some folks at these agencies, and we can help move things along. And, things are sometimes stuck there for a simple reason. They don't have a picture of your new layout at your restaurant, and that's why your liquor permit is paused. But no one reached out and told you that. So those are easy things, and we're happy to help. And I know it means weeks off of, or just open a restaurant. That makes life easier for you guys. So just reach out. We're happy to help. Those are simple problems that we can hopefully address.
Yeah, and I would second that, Nicole. I think you're absolutely correct. This is a relatively small state, and one of the advantages to being a relatively small state is that, it's relatively simple to know everybody and get to know who's in government and who's your local representative, and even to get to know some of these folks at these agencies. Whereas in larger states that are divided into districts or regions or whatever, you don't get the same opportunity. Here the CRA is able to jump in on so many issues that frankly, for folks who don't know about our relationship and the CRA's ability to make things happen, I don't know how they navigate some of these places. When the DOL takes certain stands on things that are just ridiculous, or any of the agencies, with the CRA, we've been able to navigate and really help push our members through it at a rate that if we weren't there, I'm not sure what would happen. So, I think it's a huge advantage to have an organization like the CRA, like Connecticut, that can take care of so many of these quote unquote little things that come up when you're trying to open and run a business, but really have a huge impact. It's really impressive. And, sometimes I kind of forget how fortunate everybody is to have these relationships. But, sort of hearing Scott and Nicole talk about that and looking back just over the last few months I've had with clients, so many issues that we've been able to kind of call the CRA and call Scott in, call Nicole in to give advice and give some perspective that's given these folks such an advantage. And that's such a great thing for the CRA.
No, thanks, Ryan and Nicole. I just wanted to put a a pin in that point. As people are listening in, like, they're ask the question. Don't be afraid to ask us. Going all the way down to the local level is important. You might be in your town and it might be a restaurant you opened and you don't live in that town. You don't really have those relationships, and that's why it's really important. They have their own agencies within the city and town. And the mayors and first selectmen that we've built relationships with. At the end of the day, like, they want to see a vibrant, successful restaurant. And when there's challenges or red tape or things that maybe, are challenging, we want to know about it so we can get involved as well to help you not have to worry about those things or lose sleep at night at those things. And, I give an example. I was just talking to a restaurateur. I won't put them on the spot, but they're trying to put a new sign out in front of the restaurant, and they said that the sign is 2 feet beyond the parameter of their land, and it's now into state road territory. So the DOT now has to get involved to approve it. Doesn't go over the road, but it's just that it's over part of their property that they don't have anymore, so they're not going to approve it. So we're trying to just talk to the DOT to say, hey, is this your jurisdiction? Can you help? All the restaurant is trying to do is trying to promote themselves, and do something really cool with the signage. And they've sent out the blueprints to the town and planning and zoning, but also you have to get involved. Some of the lawyers kind of said that's not worth it. I said, why not? Let's just make it. That's our job. Let's ask the question. It could be as small as that to what Ryan mentioned. So the people, obviously it's a member only call, understand that we are trying to work with the DOL on how they're viewing a law that we've updated and passed about server side work, and making sure that the DOL is enforcing the way that we expect them to and not penalizing our restaurants moving forward. And those will be conversations that we'll continue to have, and they'll always have, because listen, we want to work in conjunction with these agencies. They are, but at the same time, we want to make sure, what we believe to be the law or the statute is the same in both their eyes, our owners' eyes, and our eyes, that we're messaging it. So, so much work goes beyond session for Nicole and Ryan, for you guys to understand at a state level. And please continue to reach out to us if you have a restaurant that that maybe is struggling in certain areas. Like, this is what we're here for. My whole team that's on this call as well. We're here to try to at least find you the answer if we don't know it. We want to tell you what we know. If we don't know the answer, we're going to go and do everything we can to learn more about it and try to help you, so you're not having to be on it, go along on your own. So I will stop there. I'll give, I guess, 20 seconds of silence. If anyone wants to unmute themselves and ask a question about, Connecticut, local, obviously any of these bills from this past year, I will open the floor up. So feel free to unmute yourself if you want to ask some questions. Don't be shy. Or we did it all. Everyone
I'm not
has
shy.
no
I just couldn't
issues.
figure out how to do it.
Oh.
But
Hi, Ash,
this
how you
is
doing?
Ashley. Hi, I'm good. So Ashley Clyde from the Laurel in West Hartford, and I can attest that Nicole was great in helping us get past the Liquor Commission, getting open. So definitely appreciate having those resources, and love hearing the recap of all the support for the restaurants throughout the legislative process. But the one thing that keeps me up at the moment at night is obviously immigration. So I'm wondering what our voice is in this battle at the moment, what our voice is moving forward. I saw that CRA has some great information on the website available to members. How do we go about grassroots, getting all that information out to all the members of our teams, at restaurants who wouldn't have access to that. I know we've taken steps at our own restaurant to make sure that our staff is educated, has red cards, and that the rest of the staff who doesn't need a red card is educated and keeping our staff safe. And I think Nicole said it really well. If we haven't heard from anyone, how do we know it's a problem? So I'm just wondering, in what way are we moving forward? Are we going to be vocal and loud in this fight against this attack on immigrants?
Sure. such a great question, Ashley. Thank you for unmuting and chiming in and spending some time here this morning. It kind of led me into the federal update. So I'll stop before going through the whole federal thing. I'll give a quick update on the immigration side. Just go to bullet 2, and then also let Ryan chime in a little bit as well. Obviously, this is not as much of a, yes, there's some state parameters and things of that side, the agencies and that piece, but realistically, this is as we all know, watching the national news and what's going on with immigration, with what's the challenges that are happening around the country. I think it is really, really important for our owner operators to understand, your rights of your employees, understand the rules and regs of if there were ICE agents that came into your restaurant, what they, same way if DOL came into your restaurant and was asking you guys questions or wanted to go back and talk to your employees, what they can and can't do, what they can and can't ask. This kind of goes back to really Ryan and the legal counsel and the support that you have, because I think a lot of restaurants, to your point, Ashley, just don't know or have never gone through any of these situations before. Maybe it's federal DOL or state DOL, or, it could potentially, be an ICE conversation or someone coming in. And I think that the first thing from my side is, I had a call. I'm on the National Restaurant Association board. As you guys know, I'm on the Advocacy Strategy Committee. We are continuing to keep a pulse of what's going on with the administration, what's going on around the country. Obviously, talking to peers in California and Texas and others about restaurants specifically. Obviously, it's overarching with immigration, but how it's affecting restaurants, what's happening, understanding the difference between, ICE agents coming into a restaurant and actually having a raid versus, just looking for the immigration compliance of your restaurant. And those are two totally different points. And I think that's very, I try to be the best I can do, Ryan. You correct me after I'm done, but I really want to make sure that we make this clear, because I've also had about 3 or 4 instances in Connecticut over the last probably 3 months, 4 months, really since January 20th, where I've had false claims where restaurants, not the restaurants themselves, but I've had legislative leaders, I've had staff of mayors reach out and say that a restaurant had been raided, people have been pulled out, people have been deported, and almost the scare side of it. And I've had to try to get to the bottom of it. And I would say to everyone that facts are most important in this. If you ever had anyone to reach out to you from a media side, especially on this issue, it's a volatile issue, use us as a sounding board. Use us as a way. You can also deflect to me, and I'm happy to speak on behalf of the association and not make it a target to your restaurant. But understand that false claims on either side do not help, and all they do is stoke fear, and stoke worry. And I would just say to you that as of today, on June, ICE to restaurant in Connecticut that I know of. I've had some conversations that, we thought there was or there wasn't. Also know that to actually raid a business or to go in and try to, you need a warrant. And that is also a huge step in Connecticut with the judges that are here. And that's why you're kind of seeing it in other areas like Texas and some of the other states that are issuing those, and being able to go in and just have that raid side. And that's hopefully that we don't get to that point here. But I will tell everyone, based on the calls I've had nationally, is even looking at the bills that are trying to be passed here by the administration to try to increase the amount of ICE employees. And looking at that, we do expect that there will be more compliance enforcement. There'll be more to make sure that you have proper I-9s, you have proper documentation as an owner for your employees. And employees have that as well. But I think that, not trying to get into the politics of it, I think it's more important that, the information, and I'm not going to go fully into this today. I think it's important that Ryan's team is actually working on an I-9 immigration with their legal team webinar. And there's other webinars that Nationals put together that we will continue to send to all of our members. And as this is an ever-changing, moving target of what we know, but I think it's important to know as an owner operator, know what your rights are, know what you need to have on file, know the understanding of what your employees, and what you should be telling your employees, because I think also that stoke of fear of, oh my God, in New Haven, they came work, and that was not a true statement, and that was not happening. Luckily, it didn't get to the media, but those are things that have happened to me that I've tried to do my best. So I would say if you hear something, whether if you know it's factual or not, you should let us know immediately so we can get to the bottom of it, because we also, I think there's a lot of concern that people have when realistically nothing, at least in the state of Connecticut as of right now, or even in my New England peers. There's been a little bit in New York City, but there's some targets to that. And there was more back information about criminal activity on certain immigrants, not supposedly that they were just targeting restaurants. They were targeting employees. That information has not come out in that way. But I will turn it over to Ryan. I don't know what I missed. I try to do my best to be, I am not a lawyer by any stretch, but also what the rights are and making sure, am I saying it right to these members here in these restaurants about what they should be doing and preparing for.
Scott, I think you're a pretty good lawyer, actually. We should add that ESQ to your.
No, thank you.
Anyway, you're absolutely right about what you said. This is primarily a federal issue, right? So there's really not much that can be done, depending on your position from a policy standpoint at the state level. I think the most important thing is to recognize that the issue is to some extent media. We're not seeing widespread raids across the state, and Scott's right. I had a number of phone calls in January, and February, and March about this is going down here, this is going down there, and that wasn't the case. So I do think it's important to make sure that we're acting on information and not just fears, because that doesn't really help anybody. But there's enough happening to be concerned about for sure, and so I think what you need to know is your rights and about who can enter your business, right? And probably the best, and we have resources, and we've given webinars, and we're going to give additional webinars. But I think the most important thing to take away from it is just to know that, like any law enforcement agency, ICE or even the DOL cannot go into private areas of your business without warrants, and those warrants have to be signed by federal judges, agencies, not federal agencies, right? There's, some of these guys are zipping around with, Homeland Security warrants. Those are administrative warrants. Those are not judicial warrants. So if someone's going to come into a private area of your business, aka an area that's not open to the public, they need to have a genuine federal warrant signed by a judge, and you should, before you even call a lawyer, you should look at it yourself and see, okay, what is the scope of this warrant? It'll be very clear. Are they here for one individual? Are they here for documents? Are they here for evidence? But there is a process to all this, and sometimes in the media story that process gets lost. And I'm certainly not saying that you won't run into an overzealous enforcement agent, but you have every right to have due process, and a very clear due process. So I think you want to educate your folks that there is no reason to just be afraid for the sake of being afraid. While I understand that these are stressful times for a lot of folks, when you're at work, you are safe, and there is a process. And, I think every employer should be careful to learn about that process and make sure that in the event an agent does show up, again, whether it's ICE, whether it's DOL, whether it's NLRB, whomever it is, that proper process is respected.
I just want to
Go ahead, Ash.
I just want to chime in. Well, I do agree that maybe there haven't been many direct ICE raids on restaurants in Connecticut. The fact that we're hearing about them elsewhere does affect the mental health of our staff overall, as well as ourselves. Also, the recent court decision to remove work permits from 500,000 people that had temporary protective status. In my restaurant, where I had still women that were working here who no longer have work permits, despite the fact that their work permits say that they're valid until March of 2026. So not only does that leave my restaurant understaffed, it leaves my restaurant in a horrible mental space. We also had another dishwasher who was advised to self-deport back home, which is obviously, she was going through the courts trying to do everything she could to stay and extend her stay, but was unable to. So while there may not be some evidence of direct ICE raids in restaurants in Connecticut that we know of, this immigration battle is overall affecting the mental health of every restaurant in the state. I've talked to a few of my friends who own restaurants elsewhere, in New Haven in particular, and I mean, I guess what I'm asking is, what's our voice in this? I understand, making sure our I-9s are on point is no problem. Venezuela, paperwork was good to go up until now. I make the decision to lay them off because if they get caught here, they can't go back to Venezuela. They're going to jail, right? So this is a horrible position to put them in. So now they're out of work and not able to work anywhere in this state, and just sitting at home, not paying taxes anymore, right? So I guess my question isn't, how do I protect my staff? Because I've read every piece of paperwork I can. I've done all the research I can. I've talked to my lawyer. They've all talked to their lawyers. I guess I just think like maybe us having a louder voice in this battle would go a long way for mental health of restaurant owners and especially employees.
Yeah, no, actually, I appreciate that comment. And I think that the voice of our industry is critical during this time, where that is. And I think back to Ryan's point on a federal side and the conversation that we had yesterday, and we have another specific immigration conversation on Tuesday with the Advocacy Strategy Council of the National Board. To this point is, the worker visa conversation, exactly what you just talked about. It affects it affects the Laurel. I was with Mohegan Sun last Friday, and they lost 74 employees through this process, and it affects not only losing those positions, but to your point, it affects the culture, the morale, and what's going on. And I think that we need to have a voice. This is kind of the conversations that we've had is, with this administration and with this Congress, is there a way to work on the hospitality side to have to reinstate these worker visas, increase these worker visas, like that should be a way to protect the people that want to be here, that want to work. That should be something that we should be celebrating and supporting and helping. And I think that those are conversations. I know Michelle Korsmo, the CEO, my job for the National Restaurant President CEO, National Restaurant Association, had met, I believe, with about most of the cabinet within the administration a couple weeks ago on many topics, but this one in particular. And I would say, we're trying to navigate how we do that, Ashley, with our voice. Is it a specific bill? Is there a specific pathway? Because I will tell you, it's the top of mind for all of us as association members, that we know that the worker visa program and making that decision federally, how that's affecting our businesses, also what the future holds for anyone wanting to come in and want to work, putting all that time and effort to possibly get a worker's visa, if they're even eligible down the road. Could it just be stopped immediately and you take all that time and effort and you're maybe here for a short time? And I think that the protections that are needed, and I think that I would say, I will hope in the next month to 2 months that there will be an opportunity for all of our members to have a voice and support, hopefully, a piece of legislation or different pieces of legislation to help us with those conversations. Because every time you see this photo here, actually, this is us down in DC for public affairs. Every year it's a conversation on immigration reform. It's not the right or the left. Every single year it's a frustration point for us because, we are a leader in allowing immigrant employment as an industry. And, immigration reform has not happened in over 50 years in our country. I think that needs to change. I think there needs to be opportunities for our industry specifically to have these. And what has happened is something that we are trying to get to the bottom of and having to share our voice. And actually, I couldn't agree more that I don't have a specific today on June 12th, but I will continue to keep you and our members abreast of ways that hopefully we can change what's happening in DC for the better. And when it comes to, immigration reform, worker visas, all that's happening. And I think that, whether it's Jeff Hamilton or Jason Guyette and Mohegan and Foxwoods, it's also the Ashley flags of the Laurel of how a decision down in DC has such a negative effect on the businesses in our state of Connecticut, and obviously letting our legislators know here and how I think the other side I would say too is not the confrontational side, because I think that I would say to you, as I've talked to some of our federal delegates, they like to say, oh, it's the new administration, it's their fault, they're the ones that are causing it. Well, guess what? We're in power for almost 6 years that I was in this job, and we had tried to go to them to create an H-2C visa program and try to add more hospitality worker visas, and they shut it down. They said, no, we're not going to do it because unless it's all or nothing. We need full pathways to citizenship. We need full immigration reform. And those were the pushbacks in those meetings and my frustration on both sides of the aisle, that instead of trying to get home runs and grand slams, let's try to get singles. Let's try to fix and work towards a fix of a process. And our industry, I think, speaks volumes in the fact of how people can come to our country and get jobs and put themselves on a pathway to the American dream and owning a business, but also supporting, the millions of restaurants around the country. So I hope that doesn't answer your specific question, Ashley, but I will tell you that we are working and going to have more, and I'd love to get you more involved if you want to be, as we try to find solutions to these challenges that are happening, that are affecting the Laurel and affecting so many other restaurants in the state. And I appreciate you voicing what's happening there and how it's affected your staff. And obviously the paperwork and everything else is one piece, but it's the other piece on fixing true worker visas, immigration reform for the betterment of hospitality in the country.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions on immigration? Anyone wants to chime in? Okay. No, it's an important topic. It's top of mind. It's front and center, and I think that it's affecting all of our businesses here in Connecticut. From that story specifically to Ashley. So Ashley, thank you for sharing, and more follow-up and more needs to be done. And why the CRA isn't just a state association, to be clear. We're not just, we support you on a local, state, and federal level any way that we can. Just a couple other things going on federally, because it's fast and furious down there, as you guys can imagine. The Credit Card Competition Act, I was made aware yesterday that it was going to be in the Genius Act of the crypto for, whether or not they could get it across the finish line. The Credit Card Competition Act is really trying to enforce competition to be MasterCard into the place. They have, just so everyone's aware, they're spending they've spent probably over, I think, almost $100 million as companies pushing back on this bill and on this act. It's a bipartisan piece of legislation. We were hoping just to get a floor vote in the Senate, because we want to see if senators where they sit on this. And unfortunately, as of yesterday, it sounds like with the Genius Act that the banks have continued to dump money, and it doesn't seem like there's going to be a vote. We might have to go another route to get an actual floor vote that we want. And this is going to take, I hate to say it, as much as this sounds easy and we should have competition in the credit card space, the amount of money when companies are at 50% profit margin, 52% profit margin, they have a lot of resources to push back. And it's the frustration that we have. So unfortunately, as of right now, I appreciate everyone that submitted information on this to your federal delegates. I've heard from all of them, but I don't know if we'll get a vote anytime soon, but we're going to continue to work with the National Restaurant Association on that issue. Tax reform, the bill that passed the House, the big beautiful bill, as they're calling it down there, as much as there's pieces of the legislation that we have concerns on, there's also a lot of tax reform and tax extensions of the 2015 tax code that is really, really important to our business owners. And we need to make sure that they don't go away here by the end of the year. We need to make sure that they extend. So I will tell you that with that bill, there's so many different pieces to it, so many different conversations, but there are a lot of depreciation and tax code and tax stuff that you guys are hopefully working on with your CPA that you've been able to take advantage of that needs to continue. Also, I think there's like the salt tax for people living in Connecticut, just for consumers, that would be raised from, I think, 30,000 to 40,000, which is significant of how much we pay in property taxes, even businesses as well. So there's a lot going on in that. I will say that the policy team at National is doing a great job of on the tax reform pieces to this bill, but there's still some steps in the Senate to get over the hurdle. It did get passed in the House by one vote, but in that as well, I'll skip down. No tax on tips. So many questions about this one. What does it mean? What passed in the House? That version of the bill obviously did not have a cap on how much can be made. I will tell everyone as an owner operator to understand that there's still the FICA taxes, Social Security taxes that a server and bartender would have to pay, and it is based on a credit. So it doesn't. They would still pay their full taxes. They would then get a significant credit back at the end of the year. So it's not like they're just zeroing out their taxes. There's more into this. There's more protections for the owners when it comes to the FICA tax tip credit. If you guys don't know what the FICA tax tip credit is, if you have tipped employees, please reach out to us. We'll work with our CPA and Billy Clark and Jason Hurth and their team, and we have others as well that kind of help us to make sure that you're getting the tax credit benefits across the board in your business. But the no tax on tips, the House version of the bill doesn't have a cap. The Senate version of the bill had a cap of up to $25,000. So we're going to see how this plays out in the Senate. We're obviously a voice of trying to understand that any way that our employees can benefit, we're supportive. But at the same time, we want to make sure that it's done in the right way. I do have questions about, who receives it. Obviously, we talk about front of house, back of house all the time, and with pieces of legislation of making sure that we are elevating all employees and we have opportunities for all. So there's going to be more questions than answers right now. But I will tell you that we are keeping a close eye. The policy team at National, as well as us as CEOs, are voicing what we'd like to see in that legislation for the benefit of the employees, but also for the benefit of the employers, if it was to go through within the bigger bill. So that's no tax on tips. The other two, going back up, the MAHA movement, Make America Healthy Again. I will just say to everyone, there's no direct to your restaurant that you're feeling this. But at the end of the day, understand that, there was a bill passed for no dyes, certain oils passed in West Virginia. We're seeing it a lot more in the red states, obviously, than you are in the blue states because of whatever you feel about, Robert Kennedy and his viewpoints of where he was as a Democrat, but now with the Trump administration, we're seeing a couple bills in Texas. We're seeing a lot of bills more in the southern part of the country that have actually, the West Virginia bill did pass. That'll have effects, I think, across the country. And I think the MAHA movement, there's more to come on that. There's more to what's happening in that movement. And I think it's important for us as restaurants to make sure that we are, not being used in a negative light, that we are continuing to try to put healthy foods, protecting us from certain foods and what is out there as you look at Europe and other countries of where MAHA is trying to go. But there's a lot still moving with that, and also what the federal kind of DHS, what they can do versus what state law can do. And I think that what Robert Kennedy Jr. feels and what we're seeing is they're trying to push bills at a state level because they feel they can get more things across. And I think that we might see next session potentially some bills in Connecticut, but we're definitely going to see more across the country and how it's going to affect cost, you trying to get products, what processed foods are, what they aren't, oils, all of those things. This isn't going away. At the end of the day, yes, we want to keep people healthy without question, but at the same time, we don't want to make it more onerous and difficult and more expensive for restaurants and what you're doing and what obviously the distributors and wholesalers. So more to come on that, but I will just say it's obviously top of mind for us on the national level of what's happening, what's been released. I think there's going to be other policy things released in August as Laura Abshire and National is doing a great job of working through that with us and keeping us posted. Last other federal piece on the federal side is the tariffs conversation. July 9th is kind of the next iteration of that, of when the extension of some of these percentage tariffs will potentially expire. I know the administration is working or saying that they're working with all these countries to find solutions. I will just say that we are keeping this top of mind. This is really important for our restaurants, the effects that it has, whether it's, looking at certain countries. Most of our equipment and parts come from China, as we all know, ovens and everything else. And if you're trying to build a restaurant, looking at what the prices were maybe 2 months ago when it was 130%, now it's at about 30%. But what's going to happen with that? Also with, Mexico and Canada, the cost of food and products. I think I learned a lot down in Chicago. Actually, I was out in Chicago a couple weeks ago. When you think of fresh caught Alaskan salmon, 95%, I think it might even be higher, of Alaskan caught salmon is actually processed in China. So they'll be tariffed in China because the processing plants are there. So there's conversations like that we're trying to have about tariffs, about the EU. Right now, we are, July 9th is coming fast and furious. It'll be here in about a little less than 30 days. And what is that going to mean? But I do give a lot of credit to the policy team at National when you're talking about these tariffs, about the cost implications for restaurants, small local restaurants. But, we'll also try to keep tabs. But I would tell you, if you're not doing it already, working with your purveyors, working with your distributors about cost, about equipment, and trying to take advantage of lower cost, and maybe more so now, or setting prices if they're open to doing that now, because things fluctuate. They've been fluctuating throughout COVID. I think they'll continue, unfortunately, to do that. And keeping tabs of that about your menu, keeping tabs about what you're purchasing, and when things like eggs or poultry or meat or other pieces like that maybe wines, knowing what the effects of that could be long term. But again, I don't have direct answers right now, but I will tell you we are trying to send out information to our members as we get it, trying to work with the National Restaurant Association as best we can on the tariffs. And what is happening fast and furious when things are signed, or working with certain other country leaders about what that effects it'll have specifically to the food and restaurants, hospitality sector. So that's tariffs. Last thing I have, sorry for long-winded, just trying to give you guys as much information as I can. I know it's a lot. The tip credit side, this is more at a state and city level, but I just want to make everyone aware we had a huge tip credit fight last year that we were very successful, so successful that the bill actually was not even raised in the Labor Committee this year. Thank you to everyone about that, explaining how tip credit works, how important it is to the success of our industry. In Washington, D.C., as you guys maybe are aware, they passed a piece of legislation in the city council, and the mayor signed it through a public vote to eliminate the tip credit. And it was on a path to do that. And they now have since got a pause in DC as of July 1st. The tip credit will not rise. It'll stay at $10. They're actually working to repeal that piece of that piece, which would be huge. A lot of work is going into it, as myself included. I have a lot of restaurateurs that have businesses in DC calling me on it, and we're supporting it, because we know if they're able to repeal the tip credit in DC, it'll make it easy for us to protect it here in Connecticut. And the same with Chicago. There's some talk about trying to work with the councils there to potentially work on repealing it in Chicago. So as much as that tip credit movement was making a lot of noise less than 12 months ago, and states like Ohio, Arizona, Massachusetts, as you guys know, it was publicly voted down during the election, which is amazing. But also what happened in DC, it's turning on its head, which is a great sign that these servers are coming out, and bartenders around the country, and expressing the importance of the tip credit, and also for independent businesses, the importance of having it. So we're keeping a tab on that. Also, the minimum wage conversation. I know our minimum wage is going to go up again on July 1st. We continue to have conversations about, having a fair minimum wage that's competitive with our peers, but know that we're at $16.35 right now. We won't know until October what that new number is going to be. We think we want a little bit more consistency in knowing, but also know that there's been a push around the country on a $20 minimum wage. Also, bipartisan bill was just put in to the legislature for the first time ever, Republican and Senator Hawley in Missouri, and also some Democratic leaders, of a $15 federal minimum wage. So I don't think that'll get all the way through down there, but it just shows that minimum wage conversations, as it got to 15, now they're talking 20 on states, obviously federally 15. These conversations aren't going to go away, and we're just trying to be, in the conversation with everybody to make sure that understand how minimum wage increases affect our industry. How when it goes up, it's gone up since 1010 to 1635 in 7 years, and the effects it has on not just the minimum wage starting point, but also all hourly employees within our business, someone making $20, $21, $22, $23 an hour that then comes to you and expects, that 65, 69 cent raise as well, and what that does to your labor costs, and then in turn, what that has to do to you being successful in your business. So that's the federal update. I know that was long. I know that was a lot. That's why it's recorded, so you can go back through, but I will open it up to questions. I'm fortunate to be on the national board. I'm fortunate to have an opportunity to weigh in and express my concerns representing Connecticut, and I will continue to do so. But getting more insider baseball of what's going on, and I'm pushing for an opportunity to use this administration to help our industry, any way that we can, like I would when the Biden administration was in. We need to do everything we can, just like we do with Governor Lamont and the current administration here in Connecticut. We need to be the voice of how important hospitality is, and let's work towards solutions that are going to make it easier for small businesses to thrive in Connecticut and obviously across the country. So stop there. I don't.
Yeah, looks like you're on mute.
I unmuted myself. Sorry. I just have a slide here about Ryan and the Pullman Comley team. Ryan's contact information. Keep muting. Ryan's contact information, his email is down here in the bottom right. Obviously Nicole's as well. The rest of my team, Shannon, I apologize, as I did this morning. I didn't add you to it. So we do have a new staff member here working with the foundation with ServSafe, but just make sure you guys have this contact information. And like I said at the beginning of this call, we are a resource. We are here to help you. We are going to continue to advocate on behalf of you individually, on behalf of the industry as a whole. And I'll open it up to questions. Anyone has, we have at least, I'm going to stay on if people want to chime in. I appreciate some of you. I appreciate Ashley, you chiming in to voice some of your concerns and ways that we can help. And are there other topics or anything else that I might have missed, or you want to ask for Nicole, or you want to ask for Ryan, or anyone else on my team?
I had a question for Nicole.
Go ahead, Jim.
Hi, Jim Zeppos from Zoe's Pizza in Seymour. Nicole, you had mentioned about talking if we have like a state rep or a state senator walk into our place and telling them about a certain issue. Do you have a list of targeted state reps or senators that we could focus on? Like when you walk in there about a certain bill and say, hey, I got to work on these 5. Is there a list that you can give us that could be swayed in a certain way? Whether it's
a list of legislators, Jim, or a list of
yeah.
So I mean, I think it's worth talking to all of them that go in there. I mean, thinking of where you are, I feel like, by the way, I love your pizza. I feel like if, Representative Clarice Detria walks in there, she's mostly going to be supportive of our issues. She's, she comes from a family of business owners, and she just happens to be supportive. So I feel like it's worth talking to all of them and just mentioning what's happening. I mean, in the summer months, it's a little bit different because certainly the legislature is not in session, but it's always a good time to just say hi to them. If you do or don't know them, if you don't, just introduce yourself and say, hey, I know the Restaurant Association is working on this or that issue if it's during session. But certainly during session, if you're following the emails that the CRA sends out weekly, you can grab any of those issues and say, hey, we know this is a hot issue and we hope we can expect, we can look for your support to, support this issue, or we can look for your vote on this issue when it comes to the House or Senate floor, depending on who's in there.
Yeah, but do you have, let's say the last week's, if there was, if you had 5 more votes, let's say on a certain issue. And if you had, and those 5 were from, 3 of them were from Waterbury, let's say.
Yeah.
And you could grab a whole bunch of restaurants and say, hey, talk to these 3 guys or women.
Right. And so that's a good question. So on those issues, when it's coming down to that, that's oftentimes when you would hear from Scott directly, and he'll say he reaches out to members when we're targeting specific votes. Like if we're looking for 3 votes in the Senate, we would call restaurant operators, let's say in Waterbury, and say, can you please reach out to Senator Hartley and ask her to vote against this bill, that kind of thing. So that's how that works usually when we're working on specific pieces of legislation. Yeah. But I mean, if you've got regulars that come in that might not be, necessarily in your town, that come from other towns, I mean, certainly let us know and so we can keep that on our radar, that we would then reach out to you to say, oh, hey, if this legislator from Waterbury comes to your restaurant, we'll keep you on the call list to reach out to that person when it comes down to, bills like that we're looking for 1 or 2 votes.
Okay, thank you.
That's helpful. Appreciate that. Thank you.
No, great question, Jim. And I think just to chime in for Nicole, I think, I wish it was that easy sometimes. It was like, oh, we just need 3 or 4 more votes, and tourism dollars is just going to get to 20 million, or we just need 2 or 3 more votes. And the interchange fees on swipe, like the hard part is understanding the challenges within Connecticut. And even when you look at the interchange fees, like it was the finance committee, I think, like in the banking committee, and we have to work probably behind the scenes a little bit more on who is against stuff. The same way we have to learn more about the tourism dollars, like when there's offensive bills, why isn't it getting even out of committee? Why isn't it then potentially going to get on the floor and working with leaders? And at the same time, I think, as much as it's sometimes, I would say to Nicole, it's a dog and pony show sometimes when they put bills on the floor and they debate them for hours or whatever else. But typically, if a bill's getting put on the floor, we're kind of in a different position at that point. It probably has the votes. Typically, if it's getting put on the floor, it's going to get passed. It's just an opportunity for the people against it to waste time on the floor and voice their concerns. But as much as for the people that aren't involved, like, oh, they're debating it on the floor. Oh, they're having good conversations. They're expressing their concerns and why this bill shouldn't happen. Maybe they'll throw an amendment up to kind of change it. And then typically the amendment gets shot down. So that's why it's not just the last week of session. It's so much. That's why it is a 5-month marathon, as Nicole and I talk about all the time. It actually starts almost now, our planning of our strategies for next year and what offensive bills we're going to try to put forward. And we start in January, really, trying to have meetings and get to the committee heads and say, hey, like what's going on in the labor committee? What are you guys focused on that what bill maybe you might bring forward? And that was some of the knowledge we learned about the tip credit, how they weren't putting that bill forward. Scheduling obviously showed its face, but it showed its face late. But at the same time, I wish it was as easy as 2 or 3 people, but every person does count. Everybody's voice counts. I think that it's important for you to say, hey, there's no list of all these issues. I think, like I tell every owner operator when you talk to a legislator, is to be honest. Tell them what's really going on. Don't sugarcoat how hard it is to run your business, the challenges that you're faced with each day, and make them understand how much you love this industry and you love to be a part of it. But it's not easy. And there's so many concerns and things that are not business friendly that happen up in Hartford that, we need to try to change. And then when they ask you, hey, can we get into more details? That's where we probably set up a meeting and really start to build stronger rapport with, and we don't know. The last thing I would say to Jim or anyone listening is, leadership turns over all the time, obviously, meaning like we typically sometimes have new leaders for the finance committee, environment committee, banking, labor. And so as we start to build those relationships early on from our industry, it can mean a lot in the long run when they have an educated understanding. Because I think the scariest reality for everyone listening is most legislators have no idea about your business, how it's run, how the profitability, the lack of profitability, how much you guys pay in taxes, how much you pay in your labor costs, insurance, leases, utilities. They are just so far removed, and it's a lot of education is what we try to do. And then obviously we want to be successful. As you could tell from my passion here, I want to be on the offensive, which also helps us stay away from some of the defensive sometimes when we can be on the offensive on some bills, maybe try to get them through. So great question, Jim. I really, I think I appreciate, your support and your continued support and getting others involved and how important it is for their voice as well. So other questions?
Thank you for clarifying all that.
Sure.
All right.
Listen, I'm still, as I joke with Nicole, I'm still green to this as I go and learn through the process. And, and it is an uphill battle in Connecticut. We're not going to say it's not. I hate to say it. There's definitely a lot of legislators that don't understand. I've heard comments about we should have a $20 minimum wage. It should be 25. It should be this, should be that. Like that, just things that come out of their mouth about, they should just pay more. What does it matter if one of their restaurants closes? Like, then they're not a good business person. Like, they say stuff that is just so frustrating. Luckily, you guys don't always get a chance to hear it, which is probably a good thing. Where you want to find friends in the legislature, and sometimes we find them, and sometimes, unfortunately, we don't. So we just keep fighting the good fight. Other questions? Yvette, I know that you're on. If you wanted to, did I miss anything? Anything? Obviously, appreciate everyone that's on and that are going to listen in, that are members and continue to support the CRA. But anything else that I missed, Yvette?
No, Scott, everything's really great, and thank you, Nicole and Ryan. I love hearing all the appreciation for our members. Truly, without our members, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. If you are talking to restaurateurs that are not members, we always have a referral campaign that goes year round. And then we do have a June incentive. So if you do, if you're not sure, you have somebody that you want to introduce to the CRA, feel free to reach out to us and we can send those materials on. But just appreciate it. We have a new campaign that we're pushing out now to some of our prospects. It's kind of successful operators, and then it goes into, are part of the CRA, or have access to resources and information, and appreciate that all of you are part of that. But we're trying to make those materials, to Ashley's point before, you have access to us. You have access to all the information that we share. There's a lot of restaurants out there that don't, and we want to make sure they can take advantage of this information and support. But we need them to come on as members. So if you know of anybody that's not yet involved, please feel free to send them our way.
Thanks, Yvette. Yeah, I think there's some stuff here in the chat as I've taken off the share. Really kudos to my team and all the work that they do to keep you guys, understanding what's going on. I hope that you guys continue to follow our emails. Katie Gerber from the comms team does an amazing job of sending out information on a daily cadence, pretty much, of things that you should know. Also, there's a digital copy of the resource guide, which should be being mailed to all of our members here this week, which has other resources and contacts and some of our allied members, but just ways to try to help you run your business, hopefully get you those answers quickly. If you have any questions that you have for us, we're here. Again, I will end with, I look forward to seeing many of you at the golf tournament in about 10 days, 11 days from now. And, looking forward to also, future events. I didn't highlight before, but Ashley was a part of our Women in Hospitality. Our first ever Women in Hospitality event we had back in April was such a success. Had over 150, leaders that came in for that presentation. So much success that we're going to look to add at least 1, 2, maybe 3 more around the state. As we later in the summer and into the fall, is continuing to have those conversations and help people. I think that's the other side of the CRA, that we're here. Our job is to build, help with our network, allow you opportunities to meet with your peers and learn from each other. And we'll have more to come on that front as well. And then last, but obviously not least, I see Jennifer on here from the foundation side, and Shannon, if you have anything that you'd like to donate to our golf tournament to help us raise dollars for the foundation, we are working tirelessly, obviously on the culinary high school side for ProStart. We'll have the ProStart kids there, but we have some other good news to share, which will go public here, hopefully within the next couple of weeks. But we received a federal grant, a HOPES grant, where we're going to be working in the city of Bridgeport on a pathway program for 70, people that are either formerly incarcerated or come from a troubled background, of placing them within restaurants in the area, using dollars from the federal government, working with the state DOC, working with the job center here in Connecticut. Exciting news that I know Jennifer has been working on, but workforce development is a key part of this. If you guys are from that area, want to tie in, have questions, we hope to work. It's a 2-year program, really starts July 1st. But we are kind of in the preliminary stages of that, but that's just other exciting side of what we're trying to do, of how important, you guys are already leading in that field of second chance, but to be able to receive a federal grant, I think 5 states received the HOPES grant combined. It was like almost a $5 million grant. We're receiving a portion of that. But yeah, Jennifer, I don't know what I missed, but just exciting information that our foundation is continuing to do.
No, I think that covers it. But if anybody's down in the Bridgeport area and is an employer interested in working with the program, reach out to me. I put my email into the chat. So thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. I know it's a longer call than maybe I thought it was going to be, but a lot of information, and it never ends. I think I could just do a 2-hour call just on federal, but please don't hesitate to reach out. Call, text, email our team as you hear things for your business specifically, as an industry specifically, concerns you have, things you're hearing. It only helps us. So we appreciate the support you provide to the CRA. Special thanks again to Nicole and Ryan for your time today and for your continued work on behalf of the restaurants and hospitality sector. We are so fortunate, and I look forward to seeing many of you throughout the summer. But we will continue to have more conversations as we go forward. I think we'll send out some stuff from Ryan's team at Pullman Comley as they have webinars